Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today in this video, we're going to look at two of my orchids that I've talked about somewhat in my channel, but I haven't really made specific videos on them because they're still quite small and have not yet bloomed. This one is a Neophanetia falcata or Vanda falcata, and the second one we're going to look at is my near blooming size Violacea cerulean. And this is somewhat of a requested video because somebody asked me about them and I thought, you know what, maybe I should provide an update. It was summertime 2016 that I purchased my first Neophanetia falcata, and the only one still as of today in my collection. It was very small, it only had one fan plus one little tiny new growth at the time, and apologize for the ugly moss because I didn't know what to do with it just yet. And then in 2018 it had some growths, and then to the beginning of 2019 it had continued to grow somewhat, and at that time I actually switched from moss to inorganic media, and kind of a hybrid between semi-hydro or traditional method depending on whether there's any water at the bottom and depending on the season. But then since then, I have decided that I want to switch it back to moss, and this time around with some practice I was able to make it look a little nicer in terms of the moss. Anyway, so summer 2019, the new growths, the smaller growths, started to get bigger, so I know that's a good sign. But I still don't know if summertime or maybe spring and summer will be the growing season. Because for the longest time when it was in inorganic media, I only saw maybe 3 months of growth in spring, and then it just kind of stopped for almost a year. And that's when I decided that I wanted to pot it back in moss, because I was thinking that it probably would need a little bit more water, and also, when it was in organic media, it did get dry out quite fast. So I really wanted to avoid having to water my orchids, more than once a week. Anyway, so end of 2019, that was when I started to see more new roots emerging, which was super encouraging, because for the longest time, I think this orchid was only having those 3 long roots that you saw in one of the photo, and maybe that's why this orchid was growing somewhat, but then not really growing for quite some time. And then beginning of January 2020, this orchid continued to grow bigger, but still no signs of flower yet. And just for the sake of comparison, again, this is what it looked like when I first got it. Very tiny, and now it's gotten a lot bigger. I think since then it had grown out 3 other fans. 3 or 4, I can't count. I need to look at it closer because it grows so slow, so I typically don't really pay that much attention to it, knowing that there's no flower and it shows very little progress. So it just kind of sits there and then receives water when I water my other orchids. But thankfully I see new roots emerging, so maybe with more roots this orchid will do better. And I also did a little change with this orchid. It used to be on my growing rack, but now I have moved it to a south facing window sill, and I think that would help it because Neophanetia falcata has been recategorized into Vanda, and Vanda type orchid, they really enjoy very bright sunshine for, quite a few more hours than Phalaenopsis would. So I think a south-facing window sill location will do this orchid some good. And I chose the inner pot that I chose has slits on the side, and that is just to allow extra ventilation. But then the smaller outer cup that I use also works as a saucer. So if I just want to pour quarter cup of water in there at the bottom, it's okay. And because the moss at the bottom of inner cup will gradually soak up all the water, so it works really nicely. And then again, the rocks that you see at the bottom, that's just to increase the weight so that it would not be top heavy. And then the outer cup is really more for a decorative reason, but it does also help prevent some algae formation due to sunlight exposure. And now the second orchid I want to talk to you about today is my Phalaenopsis Violacea cerulean. This one came to me as a seedling, and the two biggest leaves at the bottom were the original leaves that came with when I first bought it. And then it just kind of didn't do well because I think I might have rotted some of its roots. So it started to grow quite a few small stubby leaves in the middle. I think there were a total of 5. And then I think I did a video last time at the end of one video some time ago. I made an update on this orchid to tell you that it's growing a new leaf, and that leaf seems to be getting bigger than the stubby ones that you see. And it was the case. And then toward the end of 2018, it was growing yet another new leaf, and that new leaf eventually grew out to be also much bigger. So I was very happy about that. So finally, that stubby leaf spell is gone. So this orchid was originally in moss, and then I decided that I wanted to use inorganic media, and I used the double cup method. So it gives me a lot of flexibility for if I want to have some water at the very bottom to mimic the semi-hydroponic method, I can. But if I decide that, hey, it's too cold, it's very humid, or maybe I just don't have enough sunlight, I really don't want water at the bottom, then I can drain it out completely and then just, double cup it again. So it gives me quite a bit of flexibility. And here is beginning of 2019. That second new leaf was also growing very, very nicely, and eventually you will see very later that it's gotten much bigger. As you can see here, it does have some aerial roots, but I am not planning to do anything with those aerial roots just yet. I want to give this orchid more time to get even more established with more leaves, more roots in the media. And then at the right time, the right season, spring, summer, maybe summer 2020, toward the end of summer 2020, I will repot this orchid, maybe. But not just yet. And when I repot, I would try to get all these aerial roots into the pot to help this orchid get even more established. Because right now, I'm just so afraid that if I do anything with it, I may potentially set it back again. And it finally has just got done with small leaf, stubby leaf spell. So I don't want to do anything just yet. And now it's beginning of 2020. Right? You can see all the big leaves are looking really nice, and the newer leaves are getting bigger and bigger, so it's definitely a good sign. And by now, you can probably see those tiny little leaves in between, in the middle, they're gone. I think it's very strange and peculiar, or I guess interesting, right? The small tiny little stubby leaves, they just kind of eventually, the plant itself know that those tiny leaves didn't serve a purpose, so this plant actually retired those smaller leaves first. The bigger leaves in the very back, the oldest leaf, they are still there, but the 5 tiny little leaves, they just fell off in one by one. So overall, I think this orchid is doing pretty good. Newest leaves are big, so I think this orchid is finally on the right track. on the right track back to potentially giving me some bloom for the first time maybe in 3 years under my care. We'll see. I mean, it was a near blooming size plant to begin with, but I think, you know, it got set back. So now it's on the right track and I'm really hopeful. So again, double cup, and this orchid is in inorganic media with holes at the bottom. I double cup it, and then I put it onto a 16-ounce cup with rocks at the bottom just to ensure that it doesn't get top heavy. And then I continue to use the outer cup to block out sunlight to avoid algae formation in the media around the roots, and that's worked really well. In terms of care, this orchid only receives about quarter strength fertilizer every week, and then I do use just pure reverse osmosis water to soak this orchid really good at the end of each month. So overall, I think it's doing well, and if there's any meaningful update, I will make sure I make a video to share it with you. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!